This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Now, prepare yourselves for a Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels special edition. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Scoundrels, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Starship, Sabers, and Scoundrels. I am your host, Dennis Keithly, and with me, as always, are my friends and co-hosts Jay Krebs and Darth Taxus.
Hey, guys. How are we doing tonight? It's Jay here.
I'm excited to talk not Rebels, Resistance tonight, right now.
Well, I'm always excited to talk Rebels, but yeah, we are focusing on an episode of Resistance tonight.
Has it been a long day, Taxus?
Yeah, it kind of has been. It's been a long week for me, so I'm kind of a little slappy right now, you know.
Maybe you need a brain scrape. Who knows?
I usually go in for scrapings every week, but, not my brain, though.
Hygiene is important.
Yeah. It's more my ears.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I have a lot of buildup.
Ew, seriously?
Okay.
So
well, on that note, Dennis.
Yeah, now that we got past the TMI with Taxus.
Like tree sap.
To our listeners, if you are new to Starship, Sabers, and Scoundrels, then let me welcome you to our show and explain that our Scoundrels special editions are in between the episodes where we forgo analysis of the news and focus on either particular piece of content, an experience, or something similar. On this episode, we are reviewing the latest episode of Resistance, which is The New Trooper. Heads up, this is a full spoiler discussion, so Taxus, if you'd be so kind, sound that spoiler alert. If you are still listening, well, we gave you fair warning. And so let's dive into it. This episode begins with Captain Doza meeting with Commander Pyre in his office. Doza points out that the spy that they were looking for is gone, and therefore he doesn't need as many stormtroopers. Pyre retorts that they have unfinished business, that there is an accomplice for the spy, and they want to find out who it is.
Of course.
So, did either of you think this was anything other than the pretext it was just for the First Order to hang out?
No, not really, actually. I mean, I didn't really read too far into it. It was just kind of setting us up from the last episode is what I kind of gathered from that.
Yeah, they're like uninvited guest or disease, It's like one fun night of being protected by pirates, and then, you got to go see the doctor for shots before it goes too far,
What is up with you?
Well, I'm just saying.
You're kind of uncomfortable this evening, huh?
Allergies. Let's call them allergies. Like that, okay, But no, it's... I mean, of course, this is their goal. Their goal is to take over the station, and now they're pretty much blatant about it. There's no hiding their intentions anymore. I think Doza knows it.
I can't remember if it was this conversation or the conversation that they had later in the episode where Commander Pyre makes the remark to Doza that you were once part of the Empire and you left. Why was that?
Yeah.
And Doza explained that he had his reasons, and I think this conversation kind of highlights a bit more about Doza's character, which was he may have been part of the Empire and he still has that uniform in his closet, but he either doesn't feel the same way about the First Order, or he has misgivings about his time with the Empire, or there's something that he just doesn't like about the situation. I'm not exactly sure what that is yet, but we're getting a little bit more of a taste of that.
Yeah.
Well, he gives Pyre kind of that little dig, like he says, well, for reasons you wouldn't understand, or that you obviously don't understand. It was something to that effect. Did you catch that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I didn't.
So, I mean, it's obvious that, he's basically saying that we're definitely not on the same page here.
Yeah, like, I could try to explain it to you, dude, but it's so above you.
Well, how do you convince a zealot?
Exactly.
To think otherwise?
Exactly. Right.
So,
right.
All right. Well, moving along, Kel and Isla, which are the children from Tahar, are fishing for snarlfish with puffer pig bacon as bait. And they've been kind of successful. They've got a few, some big catches that are there on the pier that they're fishing off of. And they're excited and they're making a lot of noise. And a First Order trooper overhears them and comes marching up on them and insists on seeing their ID. They fight him off with the fish and knock him out, then stash his body in a closet. Okay, so there's a couple things about this scene here. One, I kind of like the fishing scene in itself, and them using the puffer big bacon. That was kind of cool. But the First Order Stormtrooper demanding that children turn over their ID seemed a bit overzealous. And then, I don't know, basically 2 kids defeat a First Order Stormtrooper. And if you kind of look back at all of the canon material we have, the First Order Stormtroopers are no pushovers. So
right.
I don't know. That seemed a bit plot convenient. What did you two think?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I kept thinking to myself that they were just going to say, well, we don't have identification, we're kids.
Yeah.
But I guess perhaps the First Order is, basically expecting everybody to have identification no matter what, and they've gotten that word out. But yeah, it was a little, you're right, it was a little weird that they were able to take him down so quickly, but maybe it was because he wasn't anticipating them to be able to do so. So it was the element of surprise, who knows?
Yeah, will of the Force, but no, it's I gotta say, whoever is supplying them with their helmets, the First Order, they need to change vendors, because those things do not protect you from head injury.
I agree with you, but I'm getting the feeling with the First Order, with any Stormtrooper's helmet and clone troopers and everything else, that they provide, sure, a little bit of protection, but they're for use just as much for other things than they are as protection. I just reread Phasma, the Phasma novel, and a passage stood out to me where she puts on one of the Stormtrooper helmets for the first time, and her reaction was, whoa. Yeah. She had all this other sensory experiences going on, and she had the tactical readout and everything else there. And so, I think the helmets kind of strip away their identity and give them a uniformity. Sure. And sure, it provides a little bit of protection, but I think it's at this point you can only justify them as the filtering that they had for smoke. That's the conversation that they had during The Force Awakens. Yeah. But other than that, they aren't nearly as useful in combat.
Yeah.
Well, Niku seemed to think so, because he was like, but he has on a helmet. It will protect his head. Yeah. And obviously not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sonara just knocked out a couple Stormtroopers wearing helmets in the past episode.
Right, so. Exactly.
That's right.
All right. Well, shifting over to Yeager's garage, Kaz, Yeager, and Tam are there having breakfast, and they're discussing the First Order over their meal. Tam remarks that she still feels safer with the First Order around, even though Kaz has serious misgivings about their presence. And then Yeager points out that they aren't any different from the Empire. So this kind of gets back to the theme that we had going in this episode that started with Doza and Pyre's conversation. Tam is really bristling over this whole thing. She mentions that her father worked in an Imperial factory when he couldn't get work elsewhere. And to which Yeager responds like, you just don't get it. You're not old enough to understand. The Empire preys upon the hopeless and the downtrodden, and they provide these opportunities, and then they get their claws into, is essentially what he says. Yep. But then Tab gets really angry about this, and she basically accuses Yeager of unfairly taking Kaz's side in this argument.
Yet again. Yeah, she says yet again. Well, yeah, I mean, it's been her only experience, and she's a very she's very intense with her own personality anyways, and she's very true to her own beliefs. So I mean, it makes sense that she would kind of bristle at that. But one thing I do love, I have to say, is I love how Star Wars always seems to center things around meals and food. I mean, if you think about a lot of the different scenes that we've had, I mean, even from, Luke being in the hut with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and Anakin and Padme sharing a meal on the transport. And, I could go on, but every time I see those kinds of scenes, I just think that it's so centering. You know what I mean? I know that's completely off topic for the episode, but that's just something that just was kind of an aha moment for me.
Yeah, it makes it feel natural,
Yeah, totally.
Part of everyday life, stuff's happening with that. But I thought I don't know, I was kind of going back in my head thinking, okay, what's the tally on Yeager agreeing with, Kaz? You know what I mean? I guess he does. I kind of felt like it was a little, like Marsha-esque. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of got the feeling it wasn't necessarily a tally on the times that Yeager agrees with Kaz. It's that Yeager has favored Kaz by letting him take the fireball when he didn't deserve it because he wasn't able to complete his fair share of maintenance and that type of a thing. And he's come into this garage and got favorable treatment when he doesn't have the history that Tam does with Yeager. And I guess the other thing that this discussion made me wonder is that we know Yeager was a member of the rebellion, and there was that picture in his office of him at the Battle of Jakku.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Does Tam not know about that?
I guess not, obviously. Either that or she's seen it and she just doesn't realize what the importance, you know what I mean? Like, what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, even in today's world we live in here, people are quick to forget the conflicts of recent history,
Sure.
And so it's not surprising that in her mind it seems like it's really far away, In Kaz's mind, it's not necessarily so because he probably grew up with people telling him, about, the history and the stories and, you know what I mean? It's
well,
sort of
sure.
like,
and he's also, a rebellion Navy officer and now working for the Resistance. So of course he's going to have that bias. But
I mean, growing up in a military family, I know that my dad really, really taught me a lot about, just everything in America's military history, for example, and he did it intentionally. He wanted me to take something from it, but I know a lot of my friends that did not grow up in a military family didn't necessarily have that exposure. And so to them, some weird thing in the Spanish-American War didn't necessarily, they didn't really care about. You know what I mean? But to me, it's something that I would think about. That's kind of how I take it, between them.
Well, yeah, I mean, even kids today, like my high school kids, 9/11 is so emblazoned in our memory as such a recent thing that happened, but to them it's in a history book. So, and I think that's kind of where Tam maybe is with a lot of the things that are going on. She just doesn't have a personal way to attach herself to it, so if it didn't happen to her, then it didn't happen.
Right.
Well, Tam and Kaz weren't alive when the rebellion and the Empire were fighting each other. Plus maybe she was, because she says her father was employed by the Empire, and she seems to remember that. And I don't know, I'm not getting the ages. She would have been really young at that time. I was just going to say, she'd be too young to really get the gravity. So that's kind of a sticking point for me here now that we're talking about it. But, the other thing is that they're out on the edge of known space and, bordering on the unknown regions. This is a frontier town. It wasn't in the heart of the conflict between the rebellion and the Empire. And so, they aren't, I would not expect people that are from that area of space to necessarily grasp the nature of the conflict, because it wasn't, just wasn't as important to them. It'd be like asking, I don't know, someone from South America to care about, the Battle of Independence, here in the United States. So
anyway, the War of 1812. Yep. I mean, what was that all about?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on. So they're having this conversation when Kel and Isla show up and ask for Kazuda's help. They've stashed the stormtrooper in the closet. Yep. So Kaz gets BB-8, Niku, and Tam insists that she's coming along, and they've got to do something with the stormtrooper. So they drag him off to the engineering level. And while they're there, the comm on the stormtrooper's helmet activates, and the voice on the other side says, CS515, you haven't reported in. Where are you? What's going on? And Kaz, picks it up and responds that he's been having comm problems, and he's been ordered to check in and get this fixed. So Kaz decides that he's going to disguise himself with the armor from the stormtrooper and go see if this CS515 has reported the kids in or not. Right. So I don't know. For me, this was kind of a nice callback to A New Hope.
Yeah.
Dressing up to do a little bit of infiltration. It's shown up in other places in Star Wars. As an aside, we had a conversation a few episodes ago when the Alphabet Squadron book was announced about why is it in the Star Wars galaxy they have X-Wings and Y-Wings and A-Wings and B-Wings when they don't have an alphabet. But then it occurred to me here that the Stormtroopers all have alphabet designations, such as CS515.
That's true. Right.
And, Finn was FN2147.
Right.
So I'm more confused than ever because I haven't quite figured out why it is that some things go by these alphabet designations, but whenever you see writing, it's in Arabesh, and they don't refer to those characters as A, B, C, D, E, and the like.
Yeah. That's,
Good point.
Maybe it's just for, like, story. You know what I mean?
Or is the Orabesh like translated as, A, B, C, and that's how it's said?
The problem is,
basic.
because I was thinking about that too, is that if an X-Wing is called an X-Wing because of the shape that its wings take when the S-foils are...
it's not, that's not the shape of the Orabesh letter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm beginning to wonder if perhaps our alphabet to the characters in the Star Wars galaxy is maybe the way that we look at Greek letters or something, because we use a lot of Greek letters in designations and things, and that perhaps those letters were part of a language that was used. It's just that it's not all that common anymore. And so they're just using them for things like military designations.
Everything I know is a lie.
All right. Thanks for humoring me there.
Oh, thanks. One thing I want to point out is, what was the name of this episode? The Nude Trooper?
No, the new
Oh, okay, because they really stripped him down. To skivvies and stuff. I thought that was kind of like, wow, man, they're really cut, aren't they? You don't really get that through the armor, but bro, look at that 6. All right. Well, this took a turn for the worst, but let's get back on course. So Kaz is having some trouble adapting to his armor, and while he's trying to make his way through the Colossus station, a squad leader finds him and confronts him, like, what's wrong with you? And so he was even pulling in his underwear, I think, or something.
Yeah.
He was like,
oh lordy, he had a wedgie.
Yeah,
I'm sure that it was my lord. Yeah.
But Kaz falls in, and he's doing his best attempt to march like a stormtrooper, but typical Kaz, it's over exaggerated, and he stands out. So you have no trouble figuring out which one of the stormtroopers he is. But they head to the market where a protest is happening.
Yes.
And so Tam is clearly in the minority here, because the average denizen of Colossus Station is not happy with a First Order presence.
Right. Oh, so true. Yeah, they're throwing all these fruit at them and trying to dodge, and obviously the helmets are not protecting them.
Yeah, and they start out kind of trying to quell it like a civil unrest thing, but later it kind of escalates to where they just don't care no more. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm sure that they were told to, don't engage if you, because they are citizens and they don't want to cause uprisings and riots and whatnot, to try to quell things as best as they can. But, yeah. And they were trying to say, this is a free platform, we can do whatever we want, which, realistically, they had every right to do that. So, it was...
Right. And if you'll remember, at the beginning, at the last episode, when the First Order was showing up, there was actually people on Colossus Station that were greeting them and telling them that they were happy to see them. How quickly things have gone south here once the First Order has started exerting their assumed authority.
Right.
So they get the Stormtrooper down to engineering, and Tam is expressing her confusion over the reaction to the First Order. This has been eye-opening for her. And then Kel and Isla kind of tell her their story about how they were on their planet when the First Order showed up and started destroying everything, taking people away, taking the children away, killing people. And Tam is really quite taken back by this. And she kind of gives off I think what's the natural reaction that everyone has when they find out an uncomfortable truth about something they believed in, which is, well, they must have had a good reason.
Yeah.
Sure.
For this.
If you people would be so weird, maybe they wouldn't have attacked you. That's what she said, right?
Not really.
Oh, okay. I wasn't listening, obviously.
She was pretty confused by this. It was I think we all like to believe that our parents don't make bad decisions and they do the right thing.
I'm evidence that that's not true.
Okay. Well, my point being that in general, when we look at the things that a lot of us inherit a lot of beliefs and things from our parents. And so she's obviously coming from a position where her dad benefited from the Empire. The First Order is successor to the Empire. How can this organization that helped them so much be capable of such cruelty?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just like anything else. When you have an experience with something that's so, in her case, one-sided, and it almost serves in sort of a role modeling capacity, I guess you could say, because that was the only experience that she'd had. And then you pull back the curtain, and you see what's really going on behind the curtain, and you get to see, the full picture of it. And it kind of hit her hard, like she was in denial at first about it. Like you said, well, they must have had a good reason for it. But then you could see that she saw the horror in their eyes in remembering what was going on. So I think it kind of changed her perspective a little bit.
Yeah, maybe they had a little influence on her too, somehow. Because I don't know if this is past that point yet, but at some point the trooper comes to, and he kind of starts freaking out. And was it the girl? The sister who was holding his hands, and she was like had a calming effect on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they said I got a chance to look at the episode or the buckets list, and they said that there was a part that was cut from that, and it said cut from the episode was that Kel and Isla were to attempt Murda G, a meditative technique practiced by the healers from their home temple that would help keep the trooper unconscious as he recovered. So yeah, so that was kind of, I thought before reading that, we had talked about maybe Isla being force sensitive, that, maybe she was going to be kind of like, and that's what I was actually waiting for when he asked for their identification. Yeah. You don't need to see our identification. Yeah. I was so waiting for her to do that, quite honestly.
Yeah, I was kind of, because the trooper was grabbing her, and then Kel came up and I think grabbed the trooper, and I was waiting for some sort of force technique to be employed, because that's one of the things we'd speculated back on that Children of Tahar episode, that these kids were force sensitive, which is why the First Order may have been wanting to round them up. But I think the kids are valuable to the First Order because that's how they get all their soldiers. They take these kids from their home worlds, and especially these unknown region worlds where there's no authority to stop them. Yeah.
And no one that might miss them either, which is sad to say, but
It's true. So did you guys notice that the stormtrooper that they had unconscious there was voiced by Steve Bloom?
No, really?
Yeah. I mean, he did a lot of stormtrooper voices during Rebels, and he's done it a couple times here during Resistance, but this one was voiced by Steve Bloom. And I love the fact that Niku stuns him again.
Oh, that's so great. Niku's like all about, he's like so violent, but in such a nice way.
Yeah, it's shocking. It's shocking, really.
Very shocking.
Nice work there.
And he's almost enjoying it. He's almost like the mad professor almost. Like, I will take care of him,
Strap him down in my chair. I will slice him open and see what makes him tick.
Exactly.
No, but
I think it's going.
But again, this is kind of the evolution of Niku and the humor that comes with him that I like the progression of. It's a lot less of the cluelessness, which is just like spouting everything that comes to mind, and then when he gets electrocuted, it's something out of Looney Tunes, and more of a he's very blunt. And he's very straightforward. He kind of reminds me of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
That he's very literal. So metaphors and things, they go right over his head. Except for unlike Drax, his reflexes aren't that great.
He's very very decisive too.
But so he seems to be a little bit more clued into what's going on than usual. And I like that change in his character. So Kaz finally gets to the shuttle, and he finds out that CS515 did not report the children, but while he's there, he's trying to figure out whatever else he might be able to learn from the First Order, when a First Order BB unit, I don't think it's the same one that we saw in The Last Jedi, but it looks an awful lot like it. Like BB-9E shows up, and so Kaz has an amusing struggle with this droid, and ends up kicking its head off. It's just funny how he went. And then he finds a data rod on the shuttle that he palms and is going to try and smuggle back to Yeager's garage so they can see what it is going on with the First Order. Again, we complained a bit about Kaz's conduct as a spy at the beginning of the season and the beginning of the series. And this is what he's supposed to be doing. This is perfect. He's not as smooth as one would expect out of a spy, but it's Kaz. And I think this is what you would expect from him. And the fact is that, he, at one point he kind of sidles up to one of the other stormtroopers and says something like the effect of, hey, a long day, right? Yeah. And, I just can't wait to get some sleep and, get me a report back into headquarters. And where's he going to go? Oh, the shuttle. So he kind of,
right.
He's a lot smoother about getting this information about the stormtroopers. And then, he acts unusual enough that the First Order picks up on it, but not so crazy that he just absolutely makes it impossible to believe that he is a stormtrooper right off the bat.
And of course, an episode can't go by without me making some sort of Robot Chicken reference. So, but because that was what he reminded me of. I kept thinking he's so Gary, from Robot Chicken, the way he was like acting and stuff, But yeah, I mean, he is definitely coming along as a spy, and at least he had enough foresight to, think to grab that data rod. And I did love how he said, "You want your head?
Yeah,
go
great.
get it."
Yeah.
That was funny. That was good. The humor is starting. Yes, it's starting to go, I think, in an appropriate direction.
Yeah. I thought that really was kind of his overarching goal. You know what I mean? I don't want to say he did kind of use this to his advantage. This incident. And I think, I don't remember, maybe it was the way it was said, or maybe it was something they actually said, but it made it sound like, this is the perfect opportunity now that I've got Stormtrooper armor, instead of thinking, oh yeah, this is a good opportunity for me to help these kids out. He was thinking, yay, I've never had this opportunity to get in there and find out what's happening like this before. So I kind of almost felt like getting in there and getting data, other than, what was kind of the primary mission in his mind, and, checking on the kids was kind of a secondary one, but I don't know. Maybe it's just
the first thing he did do was check on to see if the kids had been reported.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then, because there was no one else around, he went further with that, because he was looking around over his shoulder to make sure no one was paying attention to what he was doing. But so Kaz disembarks the shuttle, and he's throwing the droid's head back inside, as he does when he runs into that same squad leader from before. And so they are headed to Doza's office, and when they get there, Pyre tells Doza to leave.
Yeah.
Doza's like, hey, this is my office. And Pyre says, these are my stormtroopers. Which, again, so, there's no doubt that's going on here that the First Order is moving in, they're taking over. And then all doubt gets eliminated when Pyre reports that the First Order is sending in a garrison to Colossus Station. And basically, everyone that is loyal can stay. Everyone else will be arrested or dealt with.
Yeah.
So, we speculated again at the beginning of the season, and this is one of the reasons why I love this episode, is pulling all these plot lines together that were that took so long to build, and we're starting to get the payoff here.
Yes.
And we'll get some more definitive stuff at the very end of this episode, but they're going to take over the station, and this is not just a casual interest, but the First Order is making their power play here.
Yeah, and they are, like you said, they're starting to tie all these little threads together, and it's about dang time, I must say. But they've kind of left us hanging for quite a while, but we're starting to get that payoff. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty brazen, him just, there's just no hiding it. And Doza, realizes the mistake he made. And in fact, I swore I heard in the music slight callbacks to the Empire Strikes Back on the Cloud City scene, with the music. Dun, 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 it wasn't quite as, I guess, rhythmically, active, but it was sort of like that same kind of same kind of tune melody. I'm bad at
Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up the music, Taxus, because when the first time I watched this episode, it was on my phone, and I had my earbuds in, and so the music was right there in my ears, and a lot louder than usual. It was quite good, this episode. It's not something that's really stood out to me a lot over the course of the season, but I really thought that they did a good job with it this time around.
Yep.
Who is the composer for Resistance? Is not Kevin Kiner, is it? Or is it?
That's a good question. Let's see.
Abraham.
Michael Tavera. Just found it.
Michael Tavera.
Thank you,
there you
Google.
go.
Yep. So.
Okay.
Theme based on themes by John Williams. So
he's doing a good job.
Yeah, he is.
So kudos to him. All right. So the squad leader then encourages Kaz to give his report, and Kaz is completely caught off guard by this, and he essentially says, "Well, there was a uprising at the market. We put it down, and we patrolled. We asked a lot of people for their identification. And
Busted a lot of people up."
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, but you can see there's something off about him. And so Pyre orders him to basically submit to a mind wipe. Which and mind wipe and reprogramming, because he's been acting unusual. So
they called it a brain scrape.
There you go. It was, brain scrape and reprogramming. And this really surprised me. In The Force Awakens, when Finn didn't perform the way that Phasma wanted him to on Jakku, when they got back to the finalizer, she said, you're support to my division for, additional training. Reprogramming, whatever. And, and your blaster for inspection. I did not take it that, it is this type of thing. And,
Right.
Finn just is like, yes, Captain. Yeah, sure. I'll go get my mind scraped.
It's what you do to droids. I mean, that's the first thing that I thought of. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, they're basically treating these troopers like droids.
Yeah, that's something that I thought was kind of a little bit of like a sub kind of plot. We see that there is humanity in these troopers, because this one trooper, when he's coming to, he seems like he's not all that bad, you know what I mean? And then you kind of get this part where it's like, yeah, he's glitchy. Okay, let's go wipe him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it kind of shows that they're really, if you can break that, it's almost like the power of the First Order is threadbare. It's their reliance on being able to not convince soldiers to fight for them, but to use these techniques to force them to fight for them,
and coerce them and condition them and brainwash them and
but
it's almost it gives you the chills almost, and not in a good way.
And it almost feels like this is something that happens like more like regularly. So everybody's kind of used to having to go in there and redo it, you know what I mean? I don't know, so I just wonder if that's going to play into anything in the future, is the basic humanity of the troopers.
It's very disturbing, actually, when you think about it.
Well, as I was saying earlier, I recently read Phasma, and I remembered the spoilers, but the last third of that book takes place aboard the Finalizer, and Cardinal was responsible for training the children before he turned them over to Phasma as teenagers. And there was this affection that he built up for these kids that were becoming the finest fighting, organization that the galaxy had ever seen. And then they get to Phasma, and they're subjected to these brutal training methods. And then we saw stormtroopers on Parnassus that, when they were asked what their names were, they're like, don't know. I've always had this number. Then, it is they were taken from these circumstances on planets where they didn't have anything. And the First Order provided them with 3 square meals a day and a solid place to sleep and, a shelter and whatever. And then to what you're saying, Taxus, they get turned into these ideal soldiers, that are thankful for the new condition that they have. And then when they screw up, it's the brain scrape, fix the error and start over again. So it's I don't know, very disturbing. The First Order got a whole lot creepier when I saw this part of the episode.
Yes.
Genius.
Well, okay. So Kaz makes his escape and radios Niku and Tam for help. The stormtroopers are tracking Kaz through his armor. But they manage to slip Kaz out of the armor and the stormtrooper that's been unconscious with him this entire time back into the armor. And so, basically this problem fixes itself. That the stormtrooper that they were holding in the engineering section, he doesn't get a chance to turn them in because he's getting his brain scraped. And so presumably he's going to forget everything that happened. Back in Yeager's garage, Yeager and Kaz are checking out the data rod that Kaz stole. And it appears that the First Order has fleets all over the place poised to invade the known galaxy. And that the obvious interest of Colossus Station is a refueling platform. And so, very cool. I liked how this whole reveal came together. I'm slightly disappointed that the interest in Colossus Station isn't more than that. It's just a refueling station, because I kind of, I know I had speculated earlier in the season that there was some big secret to Colossus Station that we hadn't learned yet, but it really appears. Well, there possibly, but but it seems like it is pretty much what it appears to be on its face, which is it's a refueling station that would be awfully convenient for the First Order to use as a waypoint as they invade the rest of the galaxy.
And there may be more to come. I mean, this could be kind of a misdirect too, in saying, oh well, I guess this is all it is, and then perhaps there is going to be more.
All right. Well, so that is our review of the episode. Why don't we go around the table and give our final opinions and grades? Jay, you go first.
I really liked this episode. I really did. There was quite a bit in here that really makes you think and makes you consider different aspects of the First Order itself, as we said, with the brain scraping and the reprogramming and that type of thing. And just the whole idea of how the First Order is perceived throughout the galaxy, especially so far removed from the Empire, with the whole conversation with Kaz and Tam and Yeager, it really kind of gave you that impression that people really did kind of forget about some of the things that had happened. Yeah. So I really appreciated a lot of things in this, and especially too, even at the end, with the data rod and seeing the map with the different worlds on there after looking at Bucket's list and seeing that some of the worlds such as Dagobah and Jakku and Takodana were all on there. And, it's just interesting that, okay, why are these places of interest? And hopefully we're going to figure that out. And I appreciate Kaz's, once again, his ability to progress as a spy, and the humor is going in the right direction, I feel. So I'm going to give this one a solid A. I really liked it.
Yeah, I agree. It's, it moved really well, moved fast. I love the old familiar kind of trope at this point of putting on the stormtrooper armor, which, note to self, never use masks in future organizations for your troopers. Yes. But I kind of liked, I felt sorry for the trooper, but I was thinking whenever the kids are like, what should we do with them? Just push them over the side. Sorry, I mean, if you had to get rid of them. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that, because that would have ended the story very quickly. But, the humor was fun. The music was good. The action was fun. The whole, things just got real, and, so I too shall give it an A, Jay.
Woohoo.
All right. Well, you guys kind of hit all the high points for me. This was, as I said earlier, I love the fact that this episode gave us a payoff on all these episodes that we saw earlier this season. And, when we just kind of felt like it wasn't getting anywhere, it was taking so long to set everything up. And this episode finally gave us the payoff on a lot of these different plot lines. It tied things that we'd seen in several episodes together. We're getting a lot more forward momentum with what the First Order is doing. One of my favorite humorous moments from this is we had the Peepit, the little yellow janitor of the station.
Oh, yeah.
Who's still sour about the fact that his floor scrubber has been taken away, and he's having to clean the whole station with, a brush and water. And at one point, Kaz comes across him while he's in the armor, and he's like, "Oh, it's very important to get these floors clean. It would be easier if you had a floor scrubber." So that was a nice touch. I kind of like that they have these running gags going in across episodes, and but yeah, a solid A episode. Great storytelling here. I really like the continued direction that they've been going over the last several episodes, especially since we had the second half season premiere. So again, good job on the Resistance crew. All right, well, that's going to do us for our discussion of the new Trooper. Before we go, what do you guys have going on that our Scoundrels can look forward to?
Well, for me, as usual, you can find me right here on Starship Sabers and Scoundrels. And you can always find my archived blogs over at Coffee with Kenobi and my Core Worlds Couture fashion review blogs. And you can also catch me on Discord if you're lucky, because I'm not always over there, but I'm trying. So yeah, that's it for me.
You can find me on The Geek Supreme with Scott Murray, Regina Davis, and Jeff McGee. And we're back this next week, so that should be Tuesday. What are we going to talk about? I don't know, so tune in and see if I find out.
All right. As for me, you can find my comic reviews on RetroZap.com, and each month I'm talking Star Wars comics with Jovial J. Shepard on Jedi Journals. With Return to Discovery, my wife and I are covering each episode on Warp Trails. If you want to find us on social media, we are at SQPod on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook at facebook.com/SQPod. You can email us at sqpod@retrozap.com. You can follow Darth Taxus on Twitter at Darth Taxus. Jay is at Joyce Krebs, and I am at DJKVER2. Speaking of RetroZap, we are a proud part of the RetroZap.com podcast network. The network currently features more than a dozen shows covering everything from retro gaming and movies to the Animaniacs collecting. Dune, the Dunecast is coming back soon, so be on the lookout for that. Game of Thrones, and of course, a whole lot of Star Wars. You can subscribe to the network feed and you'll get everything in one place. That'll do it for this Scoundrel Special Edition. We'll talk to you soon with another edition of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Until then, may the Force be with you.